Hi folks, welcome back to your favorite children's author and poet and songwriter, Don Goodpaster's life story. This is chapter 9, and I titled it, I Know You're Anxious, but Don't Be. I'm very proud of my son, Stephen Marshall, as proud as any father has a right to be of his prodigy. Today, Stephen is 43 years old, happily married with 2 children, and has the same high ideals and lofty goals of most every hard-working man, and he's regimented to a fault with his work ethics, and is as successful and oriented as anyone I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. He's a kind young man, thoughtful and courteous to everyone he comes into contact with, and we are truly blessed to have him for a son. People bless me when they say that his kindnesses and his tell-it-like-it-is attitude and demeanor reflects brilliantly back on me. But truth be known, those blessings should most definitely be reflected back on his dear sweet mother. It was his mother who gave him the vast majority of his moral training and upbringing, much more than I ever did, or could. I was pretty much into myself back then, most of the time when he was a boy, trying to be the great writer guy. Today I'm still trying to make up for that shortcomings in that area, though he doesn't seem to blame me. Again, I have to thank God for that. But it was me, though, who taught him the good things in life, things like taking out the second baseman who was blocking the base path, and other things like that, like not tugging on Superman's cape nor spitting into the wind, and never drawing to an inside straight. Those things, that's what I taught him. It's the good things that I take credit for, morals, not hardly. That was strictly Pat's department, and she was wonderfully diligent too, teaching those important life lessons to him. And by the grace of God, our Stephen was an astute, attentive learner. People would often stop me on the street and ask about him. "How's Stephen doing, Mr. Goodpaster?" they'd kind of ask. "Steve's a great kid, great guy, Don. You've raised him well," they'd say. Or, "Tell Stephen he better come see us or we're going to disown him." Statements like that I've heard about him over and over for years and years now, thankfully, and I still do. What am I here, folks? Chop liver? Don't you want to know how I'm doing? I'm just kidding. Our Stephen, our beloved and blessed miracle child that Pat and I prayed into the world, certainly deserves every kind thought and all the well wishes that were ever proffered to him. And I'm sure you'll believe me when I say he still does to this day. I was a baseball player of some not so little neighborhood renown when I was growing up in the Cochran area of our little town of Aurora, Indiana, and had been involved in several fantastic plays of my own. Plays like the time I pulled off a triple play all by myself in Pony League, the league where we are allowed to, for the first time in our baseball lives, we're allowed to take a leadoff from the base. The night of my famous single-handled triple play, this is what happened. This is how I accomplished what I did on my own without any help from any other players on the entire field. There were base runners on second and first, no outs. The runner on second was a hot dog kind of kid, same like me. A show-off, if you will. That's probably why I didn't care for him very much, because we had too much in common, him and me. This kid takes a big leadoff away from the bag. He's so far out there, he's almost directly in front of me, at my shortstop position, doing his best to rattle my pitcher by throwing his arms up and down and all around like a monkey or something, trying to taunt my pitcher into making a throw he hopes will be errant and possibly thrown out into the outfield so he can score. All of us in the league know about this kid's incredible bursts of speed. He was fast as lightning, maybe even faster. So we have to be careful he doesn't steal third. Twice I warned him to stay out in front of me, to stop blocking my view to the plate, or I'd call him down with the umpire for obstructing. The umpire behind the plate sees this action going on too, but he apparently deems it acceptable because he doesn't do anything about it. Our pitcher walks around the mound slowly, rubbing the baseball in his hands. I look over at the pitcher. I give him our super duper eye signal. A signal I remember is similar to my own phone number, 2 longs and a short. This is the pitcher's cue to spin around and catch this guy napping between the bases. We'll pick this old smarty britches off, me and him will. That's what I'm thinking. We'll make him look bad in front of the massive crowd there behind the fenced-in dugout. A crowd of at least 15 mothers and fathers by official count. Or maybe that was unofficial count. Mrs. Portman was a divorcee that year because of his odd-numbered year, which he's always divorced in the odd-number years, which accounted for the odd number of parents in attendance. Slyly, the picture, he nods at me. Yeah, he nods at me. This is his return signal to me, the signal that he definitely approves of the play I'm proposing to do. Yes, he'll do it. We'll get this guy for sure. The play is on. We're ready. We're getting ready. Carefully, I sneak away from Mr. Hot Dog Guy while he's doing some kind of war dance or monkey mambo or something in between those, and he's not paying attention to me. I go over and stand on top of second base and wait for my pitcher to turn around and throw me the ball. The pitcher and I have been working on this play, this spin and throw move, ever since spring training camp. I'm making this part up right now. We didn't have a spring training camp. It was just fun to say. You know that, don't you? We don't have a spring training camp. Anyway, continue with the story here. I'm definitely excited about this, about the outcome of this magnificent play I've thought up. Or as you could say, it's making me tingle even with unbridled enthusiasm and suspense for the next few moments of my young life. My pitcher takes his time on the mound. He's being very professional, he is. He's doing it, I suppose, to give the crowd a chance to see a very unique baseball play that they'll probably never, ever in their entire life get another chance to personally witness the likes of again, and will probably never forget for as long as they live. As you probably noticed, we take our Pony League baseball here in Indiana very seriously, almost as seriously as we do our basketball. The pitcher rubs the ball in his big fleshy hands. This, as everyone knows, will scare the batter. It scares him. It does it every time. It simply does because it always scares the batter. All the players know that simple rule about rubbing the ball in your fleshy, dirty little hands. It's one of the first rules you're taught in Baseball 101, and also in that baseball Bible book written by that Steinbrenner guy from the New York someplace up there. But don't quote me, I could be wrong. It says there in that book, the rule does, "Thou shalt rub thy ball or thy sphere in thy hand, and thy batter shalt or wilt be scared." Amen? Or at least something along those lines anyway. But we know better, you and me, don't we? The ball he's holding isn't going homeward direction like the batter thinks it is at all. But it's soon to be coming straight back here to me at second base to get old Hot Dog Guy out. The pitcher walks up to the mound expertly, slowly. Smooth how he does it. I'm impressed. He takes his time. He toes the long rubber plate anchored there carefully with his left foot and prepares himself for his next move. He's being so cool, this guy is. I'm glad he's on my team and not theirs. He's going to spin around any second now and make the throw to me. All of baseball, I'm sure, is waiting for this exciting thing to happen. We might even make history tonight, him and me. We might. But please hurry, Mr. Pitcher Guy, because I can't wait much longer to see the look on Mr. Hot Dog Guy's face when we catch him off guard like this. What? What? The pitcher's throwing the ball to the catcher and not to me? But he can't do that. He can't do that. He can't throw the ball to the catcher. I'm out of position. Way out of position. There's no shortstop, which is me, anywhere near the position I'm supposed to be in because I'm here at second base. My shortstop position is vacated. It's an empty parking lot. I'll be the one to make me look like a fool if the ball is hit and goes anywhere through that gaping hole I've left unattended. Pow! The ball is hit hard. It's smashed really hard, too. Everyone in the park can tell by the sound. Zinging like a bullet, it smashed off the batter's bat and just misses decapitating the pitcher by an inch or two. He definitely ducks for cover, over to his left, thank God. The ball is like a guided IBM missile now, seeking out an escape route out of the infield. But guess what? Yep, you guessed it. I'm right there on top of second base, blocking his way. The ball smashes into my glove very hard, and as the runner from first comes running right at me. You're out! You're out! You're out! Both of the umpires cried out at exactly the same time, and with almost the exact same amount of volume. The crowd roared its awestruck approval of this one-of-a-kind fantastic play I just pulled off, and they got the opportunity to witness. Obviously, I was a standout hero under the ball field lights that night, I was. And it felt awfully good to me, too, when the guys at the ice cream shop on Highway 50 across from the barbecue pit and tan parlor patted me on the back all night long as I gobbled down my regular after-game multi-flavored favorite ice cream treat, the Zombie. This was a true story, but I did stretch it just a mite. Remember the honesty clause I added up front? Well, I have to use it now. I did have to run the first base runner down to complete the play, tagging him on the back just before he reached the first base bag. Mr. Hot Dog Guy didn't win the game that night. We did. But not because he wasn't trying his very best to, because he was. He was a very good ball player and in many sports for years to come, as I finally look back now and remember him. And he was all through college days too, they tell me. And I do like him. I was only fibbing before when I said I didn't. He was an excellent athlete. A lot of fun to play ball against and with. The very best baseball play I ever saw, though, didn't involve me at all, it didn't. It involved my son, Stephen Marshall, and a boy none of the other coaches wanted on their teams for various ridiculous reasons. That Josh kid from down in town, I overheard several coaches say at a not-whole team selection committee meeting one spring day. It's nothing but trouble waiting to happen, is what I gotta say. But they didn't know old Josh like we did, me and Stephen. Josh would come down the alley in back of our house on Elm Street and play ball with Stephen and me a lot of times. And when he did, he was always well behaved and never once caused a lick of problems. Not once. He was a good kid that just happened to have a barrel full of problems no boy his age should have to contend with. Problems forced on him at a very young age by all the mixed up, stupid adults in his life. And there were a bunch. That's when I said, I'll take Josh on my team if no one objects to me going out of order of the draw, I volunteered. Great, you can have him, they all agreed, smilingly, knowingly, laughingly. Laughingly, as if I had just reached down and put a rattlesnake in my trousers and didn't give a hoot about doing it. The season went like gangbusters for us that year, and our team did better than exceptionally well. As a matter of fact, we were tied for first place at the end and were scheduled to play the last game of the season against the other team that was also in first place. The perfect end of a season. That's a perfect baseball scenario. This was not whole league baseball in its finest hour. It really was. Two hard-nosed teams going toe-to-toe for the league championship and trophy. And that's not to mention the highly prized bragging rights for the rest of the year. Remember, we're from a small town. Bragging rights mean something. A baseball player's dream come true, to tell you the truth. Indiana was in a severe drought that year, and the infield on the day of the championship game was covered with almost a half an inch of fine, silky light dust. I called my team over to the side where no one could hear me talking to them and whispered a stern warning to them. Don't any of you guys be playing around and kicking up any unnecessary dust out there in the field, okay? If they want to do that, that's up to them. That's their business, not ours. But we're not going to do it, right? Right. Okay, don't kick up any dust. This was a great game. Both of our teams were playing here that day, and it was going to go right down to the wire. You could see it coming. Our team was leading 7-6 in the last inning, but they get last bat, which is always dangerous. We have to hold them. We have to hold them here and now. We have to stop them from tying us, or worse than that, from winning. There are 2 outs, and they have 2 runners on base. The tying run is on third. The winning run is on second. The cleanup batter for them at the plate, this guy is the best hitter by far and probably the best overall player in the league. Way to go, Murphy's Law, putting the best player in the league at that position. I knew I should have called timeout and spoke to our pitcher about walking this guy. You know, I could have done that, but that's chicken baseball, and I don't play chicken baseball. My pitcher was good. He deserved to try to get this guy out. He worked hard all year long to keep improving his game, which he immensely did, and quite impressively, I will say. The batter up the plate now was, as I say, a good player too, so I figured he deserved to try to win the game for his team as well. At least that's the way I saw it, and it was then that counted, right? I absolutely love the game of baseball when it's played this way, the right way. The first pitch is released from the mound by my pitcher. It's a soft curveball the catcher called for. "Strike 1!" the umpire shouted. Great. We're ahead in the count. The pitcher awaits the signal, the windup. It's another slow curveball. He got away with it once, but will he get away with it twice? The batter swings hard, and once again in my life, the crack of the bat tells the whole story. The kid's pounded it, and I mean he's really pounded it hard. He's smashed the socks off of it, as we say in baseball sometimes. It's a hard line drive to the shortstop's left. That would be Josh, the kid that nobody wanted, remember? Nobody wanted him but me. That's got to be the game. They're bound to win now. But wait. The kid nobody wanted, and nobody had hardly even noticed as being a person, had shifted his weight and was already diving to his left well before the crack of the bat, diving headfirst into the dust like some kind of pro player or something. How he knew to do that, and just then, I'll never know, but he did. Before the crack of the bat, he was already in midair. I'll never know how he did that. A thick cloud of extra fine Indiana dust filled the heavy, hot summer air. You could barely see the player inside the fast-rising plume of dust surrounding him, but you could see that he was moving, and moving fast. Josh couldn't have done it, could he have? Could he have stopped that speeding bullet soaring through the infield somehow? From my angle, across third base, behind their coach, I see, but I still don't believe what it is I'm seeing, because it's such a wonderful sight. I see an arm coming down in a forward motion, and a baseball is being released from the hand attached to the arm. At this time, I can barely make out Josh's body for all the dust there was whirling and swirling and surrounding it, but I can see that powerful right arm of his as plain as day, and it's releasing a rocket headed toward first, where my son Stephen is ready to catch it. I hope. Now the question is, will Stephen catch this hard-thrown missile Josh has just sent toward him? Ready or not, here it comes. And we'll soon see if he does or not. Everyone will. On this one single play, the entire season rests. It's win or lose right now. There will be no more batters to face this year. Not this year, there won't be anyway. I don't want to look, but I can't not look. I'm the coach, after all. 2 little boys, 2 little hearts. Both on the line with this last throw and catch of the season. One fantastic baseball play, I can tell you that. The throw is short, diving down into dust way before it reaches Stephen's outstretched glove. But what the heck, these are just little fellas playing just a game after all, aren't they? They're not pros or anything remotely close to that, are they? You're out, the umpire cried as my Stephen scoops up both the baseball and a pound or more of fine Indiana dust into his glove and just stands there looking at it, stunned himself that he caught it and had won the game. Yippee! He caught that ball. That was something else. That year, actually that day, I, as coach, voted for Josh, the kid nobody wanted, remember? I voted for him as the league's most valuable player award, right along with every other coach in the league. Sometimes, even today, I laugh to myself when I think, maybe a little rattlesnake in your trousers every once in a while ain't such a bad thing after all. I voted for Josh H. for MVP that year. Yes, you betcha I did, because he was so very much deserved it for all he did for our team and baseball. And I'd do it again, too. Sure, I voted that way, but not before I had a long sit-down heart-to-heart talk with my favorite player on the team, my son Stephen, and learned from him that that's the same way he would have voted too if he were allowed to vote. Now, to me, a former ball player who more than dearly loves the game, what my Stephen did was what you call a class act in sport, a real baseball player's class act. Well, moving on and away from baseball now. One Saturday morning the following year, we were rained out. And it was just as well because that was the day my in-laws were moving into their new home, a home all their children and I helped to clean up and restore back to a remote resemblance of its former glory days. It wasn't raining at first on this gray, dreary day as we moved boxes from the old house to the new one, which was only 100 yards or so away, but you could tell it was soon going to start. As I was carrying a heavy box up the stairs to one of the bedrooms, I got a sharp chest pain that sent me down hard on the stairs. What are you doing, Donnie? Loafing again? One of Pat's brothers quipped at me as I sat there sweating, too frightened to move. Yep, yeah, that's right. I'm just loafing a little bit, that's all. I'll be right up, I said, denying the pain that was going on deep down in my chest, denying it to him and to myself. Are you all right? Pat asked, walking by with a box of whatever in her arms. I think so, I lied. What do you mean, you think so? What's wrong? Suddenly a look of panic crossed her face. Nothing, I'll be all right soon. I just needed to sit down a little and rest a little while, that's all. No, you're not. You're coming with me right now, she said, grabbing me by the arm and leading me toward the door. We're going to the doctor. No, babe, I said. Really, I'm fine. I really am. I just got to rest some, that's all. Then I went into the kitchen area and sat down. Honestly, I did think that the pains would go away, but they didn't. They only increased in frequency and intensity in my upper middle part of my chest and back. Like a dummy, I denied that I was in trouble for about 2 more very painful hours. We better go get help, I finally admitted. We drove to the hospital in Cincinnati, just the two of us, Pat and me. We left Stephen with his grandparents here in Indiana. Once at the hospital, they had me sit on a table behind a thin curtain for well over an hour before anyone came in to check on me. When they finally located a doctor to examine me, she turned out to be a very pregnant lady. A pregnant lady who seemed to be far more interested in her own swollen tummy than my ailing heart. I was admitted immediately after this doctor finally got around to examining me and read my electrocardiogram. The look in her eyes when she read it, I remember, wasn't exactly what I wanted to see either. She said I had sets of P waves, whatever those are, that were not in the normal range. That was not a good sign. I was growing weaker and weaker by the moment as they wheeled me into my double occupancy room on the 9th floor, the cardiac floor. Pat, bless her heart, stayed with me every second, holding my hand, comforting me, and it did make me feel better, I have to admit. I didn't feel much like talking, and not to anyone, not even to Pat. That's how tired I was. So tired. So I tried to sleep. How do I get out of this one, I wondered, to no one. No one but myself. Pat left after a little while to go back to Indiana to get our son and take him home. She only did this because I pleaded for her to. There was nothing she could do here but make herself sick with worry, and the doctor's rounds weren't for several more hours. "Take this," the charge nurse ordered bluntly. "Dr. Pregnant Lady ordered them for you." I call her Dr. Pregnant Lady because I can't remember what her name was after all these years. And that's why, but she was very, very pregnant. What's that? I could barely utter the words due to my fast fading, diminishing strength. "It's a nitro pill," she said, being more kind to me now. "It'll help with the pain, I promise." "The pain doesn't need any help," I said. "It's doing a bang-up job on its own." I took the pill and tried my best to go to sleep. Within minutes, my head began to ache and throb something fierce. I had never experienced anything like that before, not ever. And don't ever want to again. I believe I'd sooner want to die than go through that again. What a time to get a headache of this magnitude. A super duper sized migraine it had to be. "How's my boy?" Dr. Pregnant Lady asked jovially, standing at the end of my bed writing something on a chart and not even taking the time to look at me while she said it. "This is Dr. Cares-a-Lot I have here with me," she said, motioning to the doctor standing next to her. "He's a cardiac surgeon that I've been consulting with since you came in the hospital here seeking our help." "Hello, Mr. Goodpaster," the doctor said softly. "I've been reading your EKGs, your electrocardiograms, and I'd like for you to try to express to me exactly how you're feeling at this moment, if you would." "Well, Doc," I said, almost whispering, "I'd like to express that I'm pretty impressed with you right now, I am." "Oh?" he says, moving closer to the bed because he can barely hear what I'm saying. "And what makes you say that? Why are you impressed with me?" he asks, caring a lot, like the name I've made up for him here. At this point, if you know what I mean, I'm really not into remembering names now, am I? Remember, I'm dying here. "I'm impressed because I don't know how in the world you can even see me with this jumbo-sized elephant standing on one foot in the center of my chest. That's why I'm impressed." Grimacing, the doctor asked, "That bad, huh? The nitro tablet not working at all to relieve even some of the pain? Not even a little bit?" "Well," I said, a bit sarcastically, "it is if it's intended to blow the top of my head off. If that's what it's supposed to do, I'd say it's working very well." "That's good," he said. Uh-oh. Now I may have to rethink the name Dr. Cares-a-Lot I gave him for this story if he's going to talk to me that way. "What do you mean, good?" I said angrily. "I've got the worst headache I've ever had in my life, and you say that's good? Are you nuts?" No, I'm not nuts," he continued in his quiet, very professional way. "I'm not nuts at all. But I certainly can understand why you might think so right now. Actually, Mr. Goodpaster," he continued, that's very good news about your headache. And let me explain to you why, okay? Nitro pills are meant to open up the arteries and veins in your body to allow you to receive more oxygen in your heart and lungs and other crucial organs in your body. If the nitro had worked in your case, and because of your family's past history of heart disease, I would have strongly recommended a more pronounced and more drastic procedure to be performed on you immediately, up to and including open heart surgery. But from what you're telling me, I believe the pill has done what it was supposed to do and opened up your arteries and veins because they weren't and aren't very badly plugged after all, like we thought they were. And now you're getting too much oxygen flowing to your brain, causing you to have this enormous headache you're telling me about. Well, I say, with my eyes totally closed now due to the pain, I certainly don't want you to shut the oxygen supply all the way off, if that's the case, Doc. But could you just please back it down a little? Or this headache may kill me long before my heart even gets a chance to. Don't hurry, it'll stop on its own when it runs its course, I promise, he said, smiling, looking down at his clipboard. The good news here is I'm not near as much concerned about your heart now as I was earlier. Pardon me. But I have to warn you, you're not nearly out of the woods yet. Not yet you aren't. Something, and I don't know what it is, not yet I don't, is causing you to have those irregular P waves you were experiencing. We need to find out what's causing them. If we don't, you'll still be in danger. I'm liking Dr. Cares a lot more by the minute now. What do you recommend for me, Doc? I asked, quieting down, now that there seems to be a light at the end of my tunnel. A prudent man, he said, would have what we call an angiogram done right away to find out what it was that put him in here. Are you a prudent man, Mr. Goodpaster? He asked. What's an angiogram? I asked. What is it? An angiogram is a simple procedure, it is. A cardiac doctor like I am would make a very small incision in your thigh area around the groin someplace over here, and slice through that big purple artery thingy running down your leg there. Then I would turn left at this whatchamacallit thingy you got in there and go up through your thigh and look into your heart with a special television camera attached to some sort of optics thingamabob on another long sterile whatchamacallit, and check for arterial or ventricular, I can't even say the word, ventricular blockages. But I don't want you to worry about any of that stuff because I've done plenty of them in the past. And on the plus side, there's only a 3% mortality rate connected with this kind of operation. No problem. Well, no problem for him, maybe. He wasn't the one being cut on, was he? And it wasn't the 3% death rate that worried me just then either, because none of that stuff worried me. What worried the biscuits and gravy out of me was this lackadaisical, off-the-cuff comedic usage of words and phrases such as thingamabobs and whatchamacallits. That's what was worrying me. This guy could be the Joker, you know, straight out of a Batman movie for all I know, or even a veterinarian. Who knows? Pat soon came back to the hospital with Stephen, and we discussed my having the doctor's procedure together as a family and decided to do it. As the good doctor had said only a few hours before, I was still very much in danger. The operation was scheduled for 6 a.m. the following morning. By now, I'm too weak to even be scared. Pat and Stephen stayed with me as long as they could, but I told them I really needed to get some sleep, so they left after a brief, tearful goodbye, both promising to return early the next morning before surgery. A few minutes after my two dearest loves in the world departed for home, my roommate's family arrived for a visit. That's when the party began. Their party, certainly not mine. I thought we were dying here, me and this guy were, laying here side by side, both deeply engrossed in our own thoughts of the hereafter. Personally, I don't know about him, but I knew I could actually feel my spirit slipping away from me second by second, moment by moment. Oh yeah, back to the raucous fun party on the ninth floor cardiac room, in my shared room. They laughed it up, my roommate's family did. They joked it up. They cajoled one another unmercifully, about nothing at all in particular, mind you. They just cajoled. They watched the overhead, high-in-the-sky television set with the volume turned all the way up as high as it would go. Then finally, the nighttime nurse came in. "What in heaven's name are you people still doing in here?" she asked, about 40 minutes or so after visiting times were officially over. "This is the heart ward, people. Have you no common sense at all? These poor souls need their rest." My roommate's family finally left, after about another eternity, it seemed. But wouldn't you know it? When they left the television on full blast when they did. It's not my television to turn off. I'm just sharing the room with this guy. So I couldn't complain, could I? Then, what the heck was that? I was so tired I could barely even think the thought. What it was my roommate, sound asleep, snoring like a runaway freight train, with the television set blasting away full blast in the corner, accompanying like an insane relative or something else indescribable. Finally, I'd had all I could take of this nonsense and got out of bed, dragging my heart monitor and my rolling IV over to the side of the room next to the television. I reached up with my unfettered right hand, the hand without the IVs poking into me, and turned it off, causing a loud click. What are you doing there? Mr. Snoring like a freight train guy awakens and says, looking straight at me like he just caught a kid with his hand in a cookie jar. But I bet I sure surprised him when I said to him, "Shut your mouth, Mr. Snoring guy, or you better go back to sleep, or right now you're going to end up dead man much sooner than you think. I promise." I warned him. That was close. His head ducked down deep beneath the soft, slick pillow when I said that, and he shut up. At least he did for a little while anyway, thank God. I can just see the headlines in every newspaper in the area tomorrow, and on every local newspaper station there was in the greater Cincinnati area as well. Heart attack patient goes crazy and rips out the heart of heart attack patient. News at 11. I thought it was over, his awful caterwauling noises, but after a short while he began again, only this time in earnest. This poor man had what was called sleep apnea, a disorder of the breathing passages, which often affects the heart muscle in a negative way. This poor man? What am I thinking of here? What about this poor man's poor wife, who's probably had to sleep next to him with his nighttime nightmare assaults on her ears for gosh, who knows how many years? What about her? Poor her. I listened to those awful sounds until about 2:45 in the morning, and then I couldn't take it anymore. Death just might be a blessing of sorts for both of us here. I got out of bed, angrily ripping off the 6 anode wires stuck to my shaved chest, and departed the room, closing the door behind me so the other 16 floors of the hospital wouldn't be awakened by this guy's unmelodious cacophony of ear-piercing sounds. About 15 minutes later, and why somebody didn't come and check on me before that is still a mystery to me even today, a nurse headed my way, approaching my new resting position there at the end of the hallway, sitting on a wooden bench. Fast she's approaching me. Fast and furious she's coming down the corridor, digging her heels into the tile floor. I was pitiful and helpless sitting there, leaning my weary head against the IV pole. "And just what do you think you're doing, mister? Get back in bed right now. You've got a serious operation to go through in just a couple of hours," she barked. "Shh." I shushed her with what little strength I had left, same as I would a belligerent child, putting a finger to my parched lips to stop her from saying another word more right then. "I'm the one dying here, little missy, and you're killing me." What do you mean? What do you mean we're killing you?" I said, pointing toward the doors down the hall. "Listen," I said, "can't you hear that? And you've got me trying to sleep just 3 feet from it?" I said, referring to the freight train sounds coming from out of my room. "Oh," the nurse then said, as if suddenly hearing the sounds herself through the closed door for the first time. "I'm so sorry. I'll find you another room right away. You stay right here." "Yeah, I will. Like I got any strength to go anyplace else, which I don't." "I'm not going to make it," I said when she returned with a wheelchair. "Can't we postpone the operation till I get some decent sleep?" "Oh, no, sir, I'm afraid not," she answered. "The doctors have already been assigned, and it's too late to call them off now." Then she wheeled me down the hall to the opposite end of the long corridor, into an empty room with 2 twin beds against the left wall, and asked, "Which bed do you want?" The word "which" denotes here that both beds are empty. "I'll take the one by the window, please," I answered. "And if you don't mind, nurse, I would like to say a prayer before you help me into bed, I said. At this time, I could barely hold my head up and was slumped well over forward in the wheelchair, almost on the verge of falling out of it. Blockages or no blockages, death was coming for me. I could feel it. It was creeping closer and closer, faster and faster. Dear Lord, please help me, I prayed, sitting there waiting to be helped into bed. I've got a wife and a child who need me, Lord. They need me to live on, to protect, to provide for them. Please, God, be merciful to me. I don't want to die. Not now. Help me. Amen. The nurse then took me by my right arm and helped me into bed, plugged me back into the heart monitor, then left the room. I now have less than 3 hours before the operation is to begin, and I still haven't had any sleep. None whatsoever. In what seemed to me to be about a mere few seconds, that same nurse returned and woke me up by shaking my left foot ever so slightly. Mr. Goodpaster, sir, I very faintly heard her say, it's time for your operation now. Can you help us get on the gurney? She asked. No, I'm sorry, but I can't, I answered. I can't move, I quietly whispered to her, but I don't think she heard. As a matter of fact, I know she couldn't have heard because I wasn't there anymore. I was somewhere else, standing at death's door, trying to get in. There were 2 orderlies in the room with her that morning. They reached over and lifted me up onto the gurney as if I weighed nothing more than a small sack of potatoes. These guys were really strong to do that with a 250-pound or more dead weight. Let me tell you that, they were. Then they, the orderlies that is, proceeded to wheel the cart out of the room, carefully making the turn at the end of the bed and heading for the only light there was in view, the light from out in the hallway. The room remained exactly the way it was when they came in, dim and dark. In the hallway, I could hear Pat crying softly and oh so pitifully, though I couldn't see her or Stephen from where I was, not just yet. At a steady pace, the nurse and the orderlies headed out of the room. But when they got to the empty bed next to the one I was in, they stopped. No one said stop, they just did. My head was lolling, rolled over to the right, as I lay there totally immobile, unable to move anything while on this gurney. Not a thing. And now I'm looking straight forward at the other bed that was empty only moments before. But not now. There's a man lying there. Lying on his back with his arms folded across his chest like this. You can believe it if you want to, or not believe it, I don't care. He's got his arms crossed, folded his chest like this. Hippie, I think to myself right off, because of all the long flowing brown hair hanging down on both sides of his head. There's a hippie lying there in that second bed now. Where in the world did he come from? With his arms still folded over his chest, the hippie rose. He rose up, bending at the waist. I noticed he didn't push off the bed to get up like everyone else does. As I say, he rose, this guy did. He rose and looked straight at me, smiling all the while. Uncrossing his arms, he pointed at me. He just went, and he smiled, he said, I know you're anxious about this operation, but don't be. It's a piece of cake. Then he crossed his arms again, and he laid back down really slowly, and he's still smiling at me. And I'm looking at him like that. And when he did a rod or something, started in the middle of my head and went through my face, through my chest, split at my legs, came out my feet, and I was healed. I'm not making this up. He said, this is going to be a piece of cake. Then he slowly lowered himself all the way down onto his pillow. I could see those beautiful brown eyes of his looking at me even though the room was very dark. On his way back down to the pillow, A sudden warm flush of something passed through my entire body, like I said, beginning from the top of my head and proceeded through the rest of my body, exiting out the bottom of my feet. I was completely healed right then and there, and I knew it. Praise God, I knew it. The elephant that had been sitting on my chest for almost 2 full days now had gotten up and surrendered and left the building. After my healing took place, the orderlies, pushing and pulling the gurney, began moving forward toward the light of the hall once again, and in a few short feet we were in a hall with Pat and Stephen standing there. It was surreal, this was. It was as if time had just suddenly stood still, and just for pitiful old me. But maybe, just maybe I suppose, I'm not as pitiful as I think I am either after all. Not in God's eyes, I'm not anyway. Pat was trying her best not to cry once she saw me rolling out into the hallway, but she wasn't succeeding very well. And little Stephen's eyes were also about to overflow. I thought, though, at the moment that he was being very brave for a 10-year-old boy whose daddy was in this terrible predicament, I'll tell you that. "Hey," I said to them, "you guys can stop all that crying and carrying on right now," I laughed. To tell you the truth, I've never felt this good before. Never before in my entire life have I felt this way. I mean it. All the pain has left me, every bit of it. It's gone. God did it. He made it vanish. Pat was taken totally aback by this pronouncement of divine healing and pulled the handkerchief away from her face and timidly smiled. She had this handkerchief up and said, "Huh?" It's pretty cool. Pat's always believed in God and his divine healing, and thank God her belief rubbed off on me this morning, because look what it got me. It got me healed. Stephen started that cute little nervous laugh at us, and we all laughed together, all of us, including the nurse, and the orderlies who joined in our family celebration with us. After a few moments of ecstatic jubilation there in the hallway, I said to Pat, "The doctor said a prudent man would have an angiogram done to find out what put him there in the first place, didn't he? And so, for maybe the first time in my entire life, I think I'm going to be that prudent man he was referring to. I'm going to let them operate. Why not? What better time to do it when I feel so good? They're waiting for me down in the surgery right now, babe. I'm going to go through with it like the good doctor recommended. For my own peace of mind, I need to know what it was that put me in here in the first place." What's that old vaudevillian cliche I've always heard? Leave 'em laughing? Well, that's exactly what I did as the elevator's doors shut, and we, the 2 orderlies and the nurse and I, descended to the lowest floor of the hospital, where the operating room was waiting my pleasure. How was I feeling when I got into the operating room that day, you may be asking? Happy as a fiddle. Couldn't have felt better, I promise. "Okay, you guys," I said to the doctors waiting for me there in the surgery room. "Let's get this thing on. Let's get started. I showed up and did my part. Now it's your turn to do the same. And I gotta warn you before you do. I better feel this good when you're through with me, too. You hear?" I playfully teased, warned, and threatened these 2 fine doctors, all in the same breath. It was time to begin. I jumped off the gurney and jumped up on the stainless steel operating table. I hope you're remembering that in less than 10 minutes before, I couldn't even raise my head up from the pillow without help. But just as quickly as I jumped up on the table, I jumped back down again. Whoa, Jack! I believe I said something to that effect. You guys should have warmed that table up a bit. It's freezing. Slowly, I pulled myself back up on the table, taking my time to get used to the chill of my naked bottom. Both of the doctors laughed at my silly antics, as if I was doing some sort of comedy routine or weird sideshow for them here this morning, which I promise you I wasn't, not at all. That blame table was just that blame cold. Behind their masks, with their eyes more widely open now because of my unexpected actions, these doctors seemed to be saying to each other as they prepared to do their magic. They were looking back and forth with their eyes. Isn't this guy supposed to be dying? Did the orderlies foul up and bring us the wrong patient to operate on? This guy's in better shape than any of us here in the room right now, one of the doctors said. And you know what? He was absolutely correct in saying that. Too, he was. I was in better shape than any of them were in that room, because I felt totally alive and rejuvenated all the way from the top of my head down to the tip of my toes. At that moment, I knew I felt better than any of them possibly could. Praise God in heaven. What a fantastic miracle this was for me. All kidding aside now, fellas, I said to the doctors, not fooling around anymore. I would like to say a prayer before you begin the operation, if you don't mind. Sure, go ahead, said Dr. Cares-a-Lot, standing next to me and the closest to me. I closed my eyes, and with praying hands like this, I'd like to do that, I said a short prayer to the Lord. Lord, I said, whichever way this goes, I know I'm in your hands forever and always. Amen. My prayers up to this point in my life have always been extremely short and to the point. But now, today, now that I know and understand a lot of things much better, they're actually quite a bit longer most times, and I love it. My eyes are closed tightly because I don't want to see where that long needle the second doctor has in his hand is going. Okay, I said, I'm ready. Ready? I hear Dr. Cares-a-Lot say, and quite incredulously, I might add. Why, we're done here. My eyes popped open. I never felt a thing. I didn't. Not a single thing. Was this not a piece of cake that the man upstairs promised me this morning? I believe it was. Dr. Cares-a-Lot then turned to the other doctor beside him and whispered, but not so low that I couldn't hear him. He's got the heart of a 17-year-old, and I don't see any scar tissue either. To which the other doctor replied, and I don't see any blockages either, do you? Praise God again for that. I was taken off the surgical table and placed on the gurney once more and rolled over to the other side of the room, where it appeared to me anyway, that the great-great-granddaughter of the Marquis de Sade was standing, ready and waiting for me, where she commenced a warning me in advance. Now, Sonny, she began in her high-pitched voice, similar to a witch's, I suppose, but I really don't know since I've never heard a witch's voice before. This here thing what I'm about to do is going to hurt you a lot more than it's going to hurt me. Ha ha. So you better prepare yourself, okay, sweetie? Then she went berserk, that woman did, and turned that C-clamp device thing she had in her hand loose on me with what I thought was an inordinate amount of unnecessary torque. Sometimes I think she relished doing that too. Or why else the insane hysterical laughter that exploded from her chapped dry lips just then. There now, she finally said, that ought to do it, sweetie. Again with that sweetie stuff. Then, down at my twisted, terribly contorted, screwed-up face, she smiled and began rolling me back to my room, all the while humming an old rock and roll tune and completely off key, wouldn't you know? Popsicles, icicles, I made that up too. It just sounded good there. When we finally reached my room, I noticed it was exactly the same as I had left it about an hour before. Nothing had changed. Even the bed I was in was still unmade. But not so the other bed, the one that the hippie was in. It was fresh and new, as if it had never been slept in at all. What happened to that guy, nurse? I asked my nurse. What guy? What guy are you talking about? She responded curiously, gently tucking me into bed. You know, the long-haired hippie guy that was lying there when you came in here for me this morning. The guy that said not to worry because it's going to be a piece of cake. Where is he? I'd like to thank him for calming me down and making me feel at ease with my operation if I could. Oh, an awful thought just occurred to me. Did he die? Is that why he's not here? The nurse paused, said laughingly, there was nobody in that other bed, Mr. Goodpaster. Especially no long-haired hippie guy, as you put it. I put you in this room, remember, myself. I put you here all by yourself because you needed to get some sleep before your operation. By the way, she continued, I heard your surgery went very well. Good for you. Is there anything I can do for you while I'm here? No. No, thank you. I'm fine, I answered. But how could she not have seen him? Or the two orderlies that were there with her, for that matter? How? In hindsight, I believe they didn't see him because he didn't come for them, that's why. But I believe he will someday. He'll come for all of them. Especially will to those guys that helped me so much that day because they were so sweet and kind to a dying guy. I had had a visit from someone very special I know now. Someone no one saw but me. And I believe you know exactly who I mean. I was released to go home that day. The doctor said he had never seen anyone coagulate as fast as me before. You can go home today, Mr. Goodpaster, if you promise to remain lying down flat for the next 24 hours and keep very quiet and still with this 10-pound bag of sand over your artery. You have to because there's a hole there that needs very much restful mending and plenty of time to heal. If you move around too much, it could pop open and you could bleed out before you could get any help. I promise, Doc, I'll lay flat on my back for the next 24 hours at least. I want to go home, I said. The thought of bleeding out didn't appeal to me now, did it? I thanked him for his skill as a surgeon and for his kindness and departed for home. The next day, after my release from the hospital, I was lying on the sofa in my living room eating, with my ever-present sandbag where it was supposed to be. Stephen, my son, was sitting at my feet, and we were watching television together. Pat was in the dining room, having her dinner. I wasn't paying too much attention to what I was doing and was probably gulping down my food as usual, when a piece of chicken tender rolled off the fork and saw an opening in my throat that it thought it would like to plug up. Nice chicken. How thoughtful. That murdering piece of fowl decided to kill me, it did. And it was succeeding. I must have just exhaled when it decided to begin choking the life out of me. There was no air in my lungs, none. Somehow, recognizing my dilemma, Stephen screamed out for his mother. "Mom! Mom!" he screamed. "Dad's choking!" Amazingly, I knew I was going to die the instant the chicken tender entered my throat. Only the day before, remember, I had a 3% chance of dying on the operating table when they surgically went up through my groin and into my heart. Now I have a 100% chance of dying, don't I? And in less than 3 minutes. If something isn't done right away to get me some air. Stephen ran out of the front door on a dead run. Pat came running as fast as she could from the dining room, shouting hysterically. "Heimlich!" she cried. "Do I do the Heimlich maneuver?" I think to myself as she's saying that this has to be the ultimate rhetorical question if there ever was one. If I could have answered, then I wouldn't have been choking to death right in front of her, would I? She was just scared, that's all it was. Bless her heart. I pushed the tray of food that I'd been eating from onto the floor, onto the new carpet. I knew this would let her know exactly how serious this situation was for me. Looking into my panicked face, Pat rushed by me in a flash and reached around and began the maneuver. But, bless her heart, her arms weren't even close to be long enough. They were much too short. She wasn't going to get the job done. My big belly was way too big for her to reach around. Desperately, not knowing what else to do, I grabbed both of her hands in mine and pushed as hard as I could into my own stomach. That didn't work either. I was beginning to feel dizzy, faint. I'm more than a wee bit panicked now. Death was coming for me and I couldn't stop it. It got grayer and grayer in the room, becoming very dim. Then a last thought rushed through my mind. Oh my God, I thought. I didn't say goodbye. Stephen was nowhere around, as I told you. He had rushed over to the next door neighbor's house because that man was an EMT. What a boy my Stephen is. Smart. He will always and forever be a hero in my eyes for his fast thinking and the responsible action he took to save his daddy's life that day. Pat, my dearest darling, was directly behind me, trying everything she could think of to save me. Lord have mercy, I couldn't see her either now because she's behind me. I'm going to die looking at a cold, empty fireplace. Then it went black, pitch black, coal black, lights out. It's over with for Donnie G. The next thing I know, I'm standing somewhere, and it's somewhere I don't like. I can tell you that. But at least in this place where I'm standing, I'm breathing again somehow. And to me, that was a good thing. This place, wherever it is so black, I can't see my hand that I'm waving in front of my own face. I know I'm waving it, but I can't see it. That's how black it was. And I have this awful feeling of doom all over me, totally surrounding me. I stomp on the floor. It's solid, stone solid, didn't budge. It didn't budge like my wooden floor would have. Thankfully, I'm not hot here in this place. Not even the least bit warm, thank God. Actually, I'm comfortable, except for the eerie feeling I'm getting from this total pitch blackness that's totally engulfed me, if there is such a word. Then suddenly, I'm fully conscious, lying prone on the floor of my living room again, next to the fireplace, looking up at my neighbor, the MT, rushing full speed ahead toward me. I leaped up from where I was lying and passed right by him while he was still coming toward me at full stride. "Where are you going?" he asked disbelievingly. Still, according to my circumstances, I should have been long dead by now. Since, according to my circumstances, I should have been long dead by now. "Outside," I told him, barely gasping out my answer. "There's more air outside than in." I wrote Pat a long handwritten note of thanks for saving my life that day, and bought her some pretty silk flowers as well. I might have bought those for myself, though. Pat never has been one who cared a lot about flowers or jewelry. Once again, thank God for that, because I'm so tight I couldn't afford fine jewelry to give her anyway. As for Stephen, wonderful Stephen, I loved him even more than usual if that was possible. What a kid we've got. I'm telling you nothing but the truth. What a kid. Several years have passed since that awful, almost deadly event. Actually 4 now. And Pat and I were out for the evening having dinner in a crowded restaurant in downtown Cincinnati. I was having a ribeye that night, which was very good, I remember, when I noticed a small piece of gristle I had missed cutting away had somehow wormed its way down my throat. I thought I could catch the back of it with my fingertip if I hurried, but I didn't. I only succeeded in pushing it down farther. Now it was choking me. Oh no, not again. But yep, again. Pat sees the horror in my eyes, same as 4 years before, and immediately got up from her seat and rushed around behind me, picking me up from the chair. This time, though, I weighed much less and had much less girth. This time she was able to reach around and squeeze me. Squeezed me so hard that a piece of steak popped out of my mouth and flew clear over the other side of the table. Then she spun me around like I was nothing in that crowded restaurant, pointed her finger up into my face, and loudly shouted, though to this day she doesn't remember doing that, but she did, "Stop it, Donnie! Stop choking all the time! You're scaring me to death!" Now, I'd like to ask you a question here, if I might. All of you out there in the world listening. Here's what I'd like to know. How many times have you met Dr. Heimlich? Dr. Heimlich, the creator of the Heimlich maneuver. How many times have you personally met the man in person, is what I mean. How many times have you had the opportunity to meet him and shake his hand? None, most of you reply, just like 7 billion other people on the planet would have to answer if they were being truthful. Well, not me. For I've met Dr. Heimlich, the creator of the great Heimlich maneuver, twice in my life. Personally, I've met him. And I've been saved by his wonderful life-saving maneuver twice as well. And both times it was my wife, Pat, who performed the life-saving act. Pat, don't ever go too far away from me, please. Pass the chicken, folks, but just don't pass it to me. I think God had something to do with this, don't you?